You know, in the last few years, keyboards have gotten smaller and smaller. Now we have ones without function rows, which is ridiculous. That's going the opposite direction, which is why I decided to try out the Mechboard's Hyper7 R4, the world's largest keyboard with 178 keys. I love the size of this keyboard. It is a work of art. And like a work of art, it is also in very rare quantities. Mechboard's, the British company that makes this, has only made 500 of them. And depending on how you configure it, it's going to cost you somewhere between $350 and $600. And they only have a few left as of this recording. But this is a very interesting keyboard. I've been typing on it for the better part of a month, and I've learned a lot about what makes it special and what also makes it a challenge. So let's have a look. So this keyboard weighs 5 kilograms, and it's large enough to fit maybe a couple of other full-size keyboards inside of it if you were to do that. This is my daily keyboard, an Akko 3098N, and as you can see, about 2 or 2.5 of these could probably fit inside the Hyper7. It also weighs about 1/5 the weight, tipping the scales at 1.1 kilograms versus 5 kilograms. But what really makes it special is that you have so many keys, and they're all programmable. Using free open source software called VIA, you can reassign any key to be anything you want, to be a macro, to do anything you want. And that's what makes me excited about this keyboard, because I want a key for everything. I would like a key to open up my morning meeting on Google Meet, another to open up our editorial calendar, another one to type sudo when I'm in a Linux terminal, because why should I hit 4 keys when I can only hit 1? The Hyper7 R4 gives you that opportunity, but its layout is quite unique. It's based on a 1970s keyboard called the Space Cadet, although it has even more keys than that. And so that means that it's missing some of the keys by default that you would expect a modern keyboard to have. For example, there's no Windows key and there's no Control key, but you can remap these. So I have remapped Hyper to be Windows and Small to be Control. And what it says on the key doesn't really matter after all. But the problem is that there are more keys in this alphanumeric block than there normally are. So normally you would have your Control key be about double wide and be far to the left. Here, if you were marking Small, you would still have these other keys to the left of it. And so for me, while typing, those sorts of things posed a little bit of a challenge with my muscle memory. One of the bigger problems I found was with the backspace key, where it was difficult to reach my fingers over because I was expecting it to be over here. So I ended up remapping all the keys next to the plus equal to become backspace, but even then, reaching out with my fingers was a little bit of a challenge for me and was somewhat frustrating with my muscle memory used to seeing the backspace right next to the plus and equals. But if you can get used to those challenges, you got an awful lot of keys. Let's take a look at just how these keys are laid out. So first of all, you've got 6 different blocks of keys. Over here on the left, you've got the function keys, and then you have these keys which have these other names on them. But again, you can remap them to be anything. So I personally remapped these other keys next to the F1 to F12 to be F13 to F24, which Windows also recognizes as function keys. Then you have other keys here such as help, macro, local, network. All of those can be remapped to either be symbols, be macros, or be another key that you then use a scripting language such as AutoHotkey to make into a macro for you. So there's just a lot of possibilities there. Now, one thing that's really interesting is that this is a hot swappable keyboard, which means that you can replace the switches. Originally, when we got our copy of this keyboard, we had an issue where it came with yellow switches, and I tried to put in my favorite, Kale Box White V2s, and the PCB inside sank because the switches are actually holding the PCB up. There are no screws or other mounts that hold the PCB inside up. So we accidentally broke it and had to send it back to Mechboards, who put in the right switches for us. So if you buy this, we recommend buying it with whatever switches you want rather than doing a hot swap yourself. This is a very interesting keyboard physically because it has a ramp up over here, which makes it easy to get to the 3 top blocks, which once again, never mind that this says terminal or quote or anything like that, you assign the keys to what you want. On the back of the keyboard is a handle because you're gonna need a handle to carry this thing anywhere, even around the house. There's only one port on it, which is the USB Type-C port for connectivity. There's no wireless connectivity on here, no Bluetooth, and there are no backlights either. This is strictly for typists as typists want it. So there's a lot you can assign, there's a lot you can do, but there's also a fair amount to get used to. Besides obviously having some of the keys in awkward positions, this keyboard is symmetrical, which is something that you don't normally see. The space bar is perfectly in the middle of the alphanumeric block, whereas normally you see things shifted a little bit to the left. So all of that added up to an experience for me where I had to really get used to using this keyboard, and I still had some trouble after a few weeks getting used to typing on it and not making typos. So some of the keys on our prototype here seem to be a little bit higher than others. For example, the J, to my view, looks a little bit higher than the K. And we pressed the caps all the way in, so don't think it's an issue with the caps per se. So I'm going to show how you can use the VIA software, which is a very common web-based application, which you find at usevia, I think it's usevia.app, to show the key map on here. So here it shows on my screen that I have a complete map of the keyboard, and I can take any key I want. Like you see that I've mapped all these to be backspace. I can map this to be backspace also. If I want to just click on it, and then I can look at the basic keys here and say, hey, I want this to be something else. Maybe I even want it to be a space bar or whatever. I can change it. I can also assign any key to be a macro key, which means I can program for it. And I can even assign the keys to be media keys. So any key on here, all these that say custom, or even ones that don't, I can easily assign to be another key using this interface. If someone picked this up today, the first thing they should do is map a control key and a Windows key to the keyboard, because otherwise they won't have those keys that you need to use basically any modern operating system, whether it's Mac OS or Windows or Linux. This is a really fascinating keyboard, a work of art that is taking keyboards in the direction where they should be going, which is giving you more keys so that you can be more productive. That's just our quick look at the Hyper7 R4 here at Tom's Hardware.